Hello everyone, thank you so much for clicking on today's video and welcome to my channel. This post is an old one. I wouldn't necessarily say that it has the happiest ending ever, but as OP states later on, there is bittersweet justice. Anyhow, I do hope that you enjoy this story, or if not the tale itself, then at least my telling of it. If you do, please give it a thumbs up. Anyhow, onto the story. For context, I've been married to my wife for about 10 years and we're a mixed-race couple. I'm Asian and she's Caucasian. I've gotten along with her family, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, but I always feel like her father-in-law and other sister-in-law, whom we'll call Sarah, never really liked me. I'm a professionally trained chef with over 15 years of experience, and I work at a high-end Chinese restaurant, a spin-off of a popular one in Beijing in a large US city. My crew and I have won several awards, and I've been explicitly told that I'll be the next executive chef. Sarah is also a professionally trained chef and works at a popular upscale French restaurant in the city. She constantly brags about it, and no joke, compares herself out loud to Ramsay and Bourdain. Whenever I'm at my mother-in-law and father-in-law's house and helping out in the kitchen, Sarah is always criticizing everything that I do, whether it's chopping, braising, marinating, etc. She always butts in with comments like, I think you should actually do it like this. I've been patient for my wife and sidestepped those comments, saying things like, thanks, but I'll stick to the way that I do it. Things came to a head 2 weeks ago when my wife, father-in-law, mother-in-law and I were in the parents' kitchen preparing for my mother-in-law's birthday. We were running a bit behind, so things were heated, which I kind of like because it reminds me of work, and that's when Sarah walked in. She took one look at what I was doing and scoffed and said something like, "Oh wow, okay, so that's not the right way of doing things." It hit a nerve and I pretty sternly told her to stop criticizing my cooking and that I'm also a chef like her. She laughed and said, "Making kung pao chicken at some Chinese restaurant doesn't count." The kitchen went silent. Father-in-law snorted and chuckled and my mother-in-law yelled, "Sarah, what on earth is wrong with you?" I stopped what I was doing, swore at her and called her a racist piece of apologized to my mother-in-law for not being able to stay, and left for home with my wife. Apparently, this caused a massive fight after we left, with my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and other sister-in-law taking my side, and my father-in-law and Sarah saying that it was quote-unquote a joke, but also kind of true, and that I was being too sensitive. The extended family somehow got wind of this, and now everyone is arguing and taking sides, with my wife even getting texts from some of her cousins apologizing for Sarah's behavior. Despite being on my side, my wife is begging me to apologize so that the fighting will stop, but I refuse to because F Sarah and her blatant racism. So, am I the a-hole? So, my wife has also informed me that now Sarah may be in trouble at work, and she's blaming me for it. Apparently, one of her co-workers heard her rant about what happened and reported it to management. And to clarify, Sarah's blaming me, though my wife is partly blaming me. OP went on to add, "So it looks like one of my wife's cousins found this post and put it on Sarah's Facebook wall going, 'This is you, right?' Her Facebook friends are starting to comment with things like, 'If this is you, Sarah, then I'm disappointed.' I think Sarah's still at work. The situation might be hitting the fan soon, and now my wife is angry at me too. I will try to update, but I might have to delete this post if things go nuclear." Then they added, "I was considering removing this, but I just got a voicemail from my father-in-law that, quote-unquote, my presence was only being tolerated up until this point, and threatened a world of hurt if I didn't delete this post. I'm officially going to keep this post up. And if you're still reading this, Doug, I'm very disappointed in you. You're better than this. I'll also continue to update, and thanks again for all of your support." Then they added, "Lots of stuff just went down." First, my wife got a call from my sister-in-law. From my wife's paraphrasing, Sarah started screaming, crying at her the moment my wife picked up, and said that she just got demoted because of her quote-unquote Asian slur husband. I think all of us are disappointed in you too, Sarah. Apparently, some of her co-workers have her on Facebook and showed the post to management, which combined with her earlier rant, double whammied her back to being a line cook, and now she might get fired. My wife told her to go F herself and is now solidly on my side after taking a verbal abuse from Sarah and reading some of the comments here. My wife is still the opposite of happy though. 2. My wife called mother-in-law and asked her what on earth was going on with father-in-law. My mother-in-law was confused, so my wife played back the voicemail I had on my phone, and apparently my mother-in-law literally just walked away from the phone without hanging up and started screaming at my father-in-law. 3. The Facebook post has now developed into a flaming war with family and friends jumping in. Suffice to say, it has officially gone nuclear. I'd like to clarify that I got my wife and my mother-in-law's permission to post this update, out of respect for them and their privacy. Suffice to say, it's been kind of nuts this past week. My wife and I had to turn off social media for a bit because of the stuff that was caused by her cousin putting my last post on Sarah's Facebook page. Some people even tried to call the restaurant I work at to get me fired as retribution, but luckily everyone there is 100% on my side. Or as my boss likes to put it, F Sarah, F those racists, F them so goddamn much. I guess it didn't help them that half of the calls involved threats, screaming, and more racial slurs. We didn't hear any update from her family, even though we assumed that stuff met the fan after mother-in-law found out about father-in-law's threatening voicemail. Still disappointed in you, Doug. But that changed on Sunday night when mother-in-law suddenly showed up at our door with overnight bags. After we took a moment to help unpack and calm down, she spilled the beans on everything. My father-in-law, aka Doug. Apparently, my mother-in-law and father-in-law were already having trouble in their marriage, and it was only made worse with a certain 2016 presidential election. She's a Democrat and he has apparently gone more far-right since then. Seems that a line was crossed with the Kung Pao incident and his voicemail, when he refused to apologize for anything. Typical Doug. She asked for a divorce and he went berserk. She didn't feel safe there, so that's when she came over. Other brother-in-law and sister-in-law live out of town. Extended family, aka the Great Facebook War of 2021. You may have been able to tell already, but the extended family was largely arguing, fighting, dividing along political lines for a few years now, and my cousin's Facebook post was likely just the light to set off the power keg. According to my mother-in-law, the fallout has allegedly already led to some breakups, excommunication of some family members, and even an argument that ended with police involvement. I haven't verified this myself though. And finally, Sarah, or the sister-in-law. According to my mother-in-law, Sarah came over to her place on Friday. The writing was on the wall and she was basically forced to quit. Despite her trying to start from scratch as a line cook, the entire staff turned against her. Nothing was coming back from the dish pit for her, and she was getting the cold shoulder. She's a great chef, I will admit this is true, but they took no chance since it turns out, I'm not kidding, they're partly owned by a Chinese investment company. I found this hard to believe and didn't want to add this detail, but it turned out to be true after some research. I won't say any further for privacy's sake. Word got around in the local industry and Sarah's essentially blacklisted from high-end establishments. She's now considering selling her home and moving to find work. As much as I don't like her and found her behavior horrifying, I didn't intend for this to happen, so I've reached out to some buds in other states to see if they had any openings. Whether or not she wants to take it is up to her. And no, she has not apologized for anything either, but I still want to be a decent person to her. It sure doesn't feel like a happy ending. Perhaps bittersweet justice, but that's all I can give you. Thank you for all your support and for reading. So guys, what did you think about the story? At the risk of sounding old, which let's be honest I am seriously disappointed in all of the racist people here. It just deeply hurts me to see this sort of racism pretty much breaking up families. I'm really proud of OP. He was so empathetic and so mature, especially towards the end where he was talking about possibly helping Sarah out. Like, that is so amazing. I wish all of the happiness on OP. Anyhow, I do hope that you enjoyed this story. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And please subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories from Reddit with updates.